𝐉𝐄𝐄𝐄, Sword of the Spirit, narrated and interpreted by Wendy. Shopthim, Judges, Chapter 1. Now after the death of Jehushua, it came to pass that the children of Yeshareal asked Jehushua, saying, Who will go up for us against the Canaani first, to fight against them? And Jehushua said, Yehuda will go up. Behold, I have delivered the land into his hand. Therefore Yehuda said to Shimon his brother, Come up with me into my lot, that we may fight against the Canaani, and likewise I will go up with you into your lot. So Shimon went with him. Then Yehuda went up, and Jehushua delivered the Canaani and the Perizi into their hand, and of them they slew 10,000 men in Bezek. Furthermore, they found Lord Bezek in Bezek, and they fought against him, and they slew the Canaani and the Perizi. But Lord Bezek fled. So they pursued after him, and caught him, and cut off his thumbs and his great toes. Then Lord Bezek said, 70 kings gathered under my table have had their thumbs and great toes cut off. Like I have done, so too Elohim has required of me. Moreover, they brought him to Yerushalayim, and there he died. Now the children of Yehuda had fought against Yerushalayim, and had taken it, and smitten it with the edge of the sword, and set the city on fire. And afterward the children of Yehuda went down to fight against the Canaani, who dwelt in the mountain, and in the south, and in the valley. Also Yehuda went against the Canaani, who dwelt in Hebron. Now the previous name of Hebron was Kiriath Arba, and they slew Sheshai, and Achiman, and Talmai. And from there he went against the inhabitants of Deber, and the previous name of Deber was Kiriath Seper. And Caleb said, He who strikes Kiriath Seper and takes it, to him I will give Achsah, my daughter, for a wife. And Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother, took it. So he gave him Achsah, his daughter, for a wife. And it came to pass, as she came, that she persuaded him to ask her father for a field, and she dismounted her ass. Then Caleb asked her, What do you want? And she said to him, Give me a blessing, for you have given me a southern land. Give me spring waters also. Therefore Caleb gave her the upper springs and the lower springs. And the children of the Keni, Musha's father-in-law, went up out of the city of palm trees with the children of Yehuda into the wilderness of Yehuda, which lies in the south of Arad, and they went and dwelt among the people. Also Yehuda went with Shimon his brother, and they slew the Canaani who inhabited Zebat, and completely destroyed it. And the name of the city was called 𝐉𝐄𝐄. Also Yehuda took Azzah, Gaza, with its borders, and Ashkelon with its borders, and Akrun with its borders. Furthermore, Jehushua was with Yehuda. Therefore he drove out the inhabitants of the mountain. However, he did not drive out the inhabitants of the valley, because they had iron chariots. And they gave Hebron to Caleb, as Musha said, and there he expelled the 3 sons of the Anaki. And the children of Binyamin did not drive out the Yebusi, who inhabited Yerushalayim. Therefore the Yebusi dwell with the children of Binyamin in Yerushalayim to this day. Moreover, the house of Yusuf, they went up against Beit-al, and Jehushua was with them also. And the house of Yusuf sent to spy out Beit-al. Now the previous name of the city was Luzah. And the spies saw a man come out of the city, and they said to him, We pray you, show us the entrance into the city, and we will show you mercy. And when he showed them the entrance into the city, they struck the city with the edge of the sword, but they let the man and all his family go. And the man went into the land of the Hitti, and built a city, and called the name of it Luzah, which is the name of it to this day. Nor did Manasseh drive out the inhabitants of Beit Shean and her towns, nor Ta'anak and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Dar and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Iblaam and her towns, nor the inhabitants of Megiddo and her towns. Thus the Canaani would dwell in the land. And it came to pass when Yeshariel was strong, that they put the Canaani to tribute, and did not drive them out completely. Nor did Ephraim drive out the Canaani who dwelt in Gezer, but the Canaani dwelt in Gezer among them. Nor did Zebulun drive out the inhabitants of Kitron, nor the inhabitants of Nahalal, but the Canaani dwelt among them, and became tributaries. Nor did Asher drive out the inhabitants of Aku, nor the inhabitants of Sidon, nor of Achlab, nor of Akzib, nor of Chilba, nor of Apzik, nor of Rechab. But the Ashuri dwelt among the Canaani, the inhabitants from the land, for they did not drive them out. Nor did Naphtali drive out the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh, nor the inhabitants of Beit Anet, but he dwelt among the Canaani, the inhabitants of the land. Nevertheless, the inhabitants of Beit Shemesh and Beit Anet became tributaries to them. And the Amori forced the children of Dan into the mountain, for they would not suffer them to come down to the valley. But the Amori were content to dwell in Mount Harez, in Ayalun, and in Sha'albim. Yet the hand of the house of Yusuf prevailed, so that they became tributaries. And the border of the Amori was from the going up to Akrabim, from the rock and upward. Chapter 2. And an angel of Yehovah came up from Gilgal to Bakim, and said, I made you go up out of Mitzrayim, and brought you to the land which I swore to your fathers. And I said, I will never break my covenant with you. Also, you will not make a league with the inhabitants of this land. You will throw down their altars. But you have not obeyed my voice. Why have you done this? And I also said, I will not drive them out from before you, because they will be like thorns in your sides, and their deities will be a trap for you. Now it came to pass, when the angel of Yehovah spoke these words to all the children of Yeshariel, that the people lifted up their voice and wept. And they called the name of that place Bakim, and there they sacrificed unto Yehovah. And when Jehushua let the people go, the children of Yeshariel left, each man to his inheritance, to possess the land. And the people served Yehovah all the days of Jehushua, and all the days of the elders who outlived Jehushua, who had seen all the great works of Yehovah, what he did for Yeshariel. Furthermore, Jehushua, the son of Nun, the servant of Yehovah, died at 110 years old. And they buried him in the border of his inheritance, in Timnath-Heres, in the mount of Ephraim, on the north side of the hill Gaash. Then all the generations was gathered to their fathers also. And there arose another generation after them, who did not know Yehovah, not even the works that he had done for Yeshariel. Moreover, the children of Yeshariel did evil in the sight of Yehovah, and served the Baalim. And they forsook Yehovah, Elohim of their fathers, who brought them out from the land of Mitzrayim, and followed other deities, the deities of the people who were round about them, and bowed themselves to them, and provoked Yehovah to anger. And they forsook Yehovah, and served Baal and Ashtarut. Therefore the anger of Yehovah was hot against Yeshariel, and he delivered them into the hands of spoilers who plundered them, and he sold them into the hands of their enemies round about, so that they could not stand before their enemies any longer. Wherever they went out, the hand of Yehovah was against them for evil, like Yehovah had said and swore to them. And they were greatly distressed. Nevertheless, Yehovah raised up judges who delivered them out of the hand of those who plundered them. Still yet they would not hearken to their judges, but they went whoring after other deities, and bowed themselves to them, They quickly turned from the way that their fathers walked. Obeying the commandments of 𝐉𝐄 they did not do. And when 𝐉𝐄 raised up judges, then 𝐉𝐄 was with the judge, and delivered them out of the hand of their enemies all the days of the judge. For their groans, which was caused by those who oppressed and vexed them, consoled 𝐉𝐄. And it came to pass, when the judge was dead, that they returned and became more corrupt than their fathers, in following other deities to serve and bow down to them. They did not cease from their doings, nor from their stubborn way. And the anger of 𝐉𝐄 was hot against Yeshariel. And he said, Because these people have transgressed my covenant, which I commanded their fathers, and have not hearkened to my voice, I will not drive out any of the nations which Jehushua left when he died from before them any more also, so that by them I may prove Yeshariel, whether they will keep the way of 𝐉𝐄 to walk in it or not, like their fathers kept it. Therefore 𝐉𝐄 left those nations without driving them out quickly, nor did he deliver them into the hand of Jehushua. Chapter 3. Now these are the nations that 𝐉𝐄 left to prove Yeshariel, everyone who does not know all the wars of Canaan, only so that the generations of the children of Yeshariel might know to teach themselves war, at least those who have not known it previously. 5 lords of the Pelishtim, Palestine, and all the Canaani, and the Zazudim, and the Hiwi, who dwelt in Mount Lebanon, from Mount Baal-Hermon to the entering of Hamat. Therefore they were to prove Yeshariel by them, to know whether they would hearken to the commandments of 𝐉𝐄, which he commanded their fathers by the hand of Moshe. Furthermore, the children of Yeshariel dwelt among the Canaani, Hitti, and Amori, and Perizi, and Hiwi, and Yebusi. Also they took their daughters to be their wives, and gave their daughters to their sons, and served their deities. And the children of Yeshariel did evil in the sight of 𝐉𝐄, and forgot 𝐉𝐄 their Elohim, and served the Baalim, and the Asherut. Therefore the anger of 𝐉𝐄 was hot against Yeshariel, and he sold them into the hand of Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia. And the children of Yeshariel served Cushan-Rishathaim for 8 years. And when the children of Yeshariel cried unto 𝐉𝐄, 𝐉𝐄 raised up a deliverer for the children of Yeshariel, who delivered them, Othniel, the son of Kenaz, Caleb's younger brother. And the Ruach of Elohim came upon him, and he judged Yeshariel, and went out to war. And 𝐉𝐄 delivered Cushan-Rishathaim, king of Mesopotamia, into his hand, and his hand prevailed against Cushan-Rishathaim. So the land had rest for 40 years. Then Othniel, the son of Kenaz, died. Moreover, the children of Yeshariel did evil in the sight of 𝐉𝐄 again. So 𝐉𝐄 strengthened Eglon, the king of Moab, against Yeshariel, because they had done evil in the sight of 𝐉𝐄. Therefore he gathered to himself the children of Ammon and Amalek, and went and struck Yeshariel, and possessed the city of palm trees. Thus the children of Yeshariel served Eglon, the king of Moab, for 18 years. But when the children of Yeshariel cried unto 𝐉𝐄, 𝐉𝐄 raised up a deliverer for them, Ahud, the son of Gerah, the son of Binyamin, a man with a restricted hand. Yet by his hand the children of Yeshariel sent a present to Eglon, the king of Moab. And Ahud made himself a dagger which had 2 edges, of a cubit length, and he bound it upon his thigh under his clothes. Then he brought the present to Eglon, the king of Moab. Moreover, Eglon was a very fat man. And when he had finished offering the present, he sent away the people who carried the present. However, he turned again from the graven images that were by Gilgal, and said, I have a secret word for you, O king. Who said, Keep silent. Therefore all who stood by him went out from him. Then Ehud came to him, and he was sitting in a summer parlor, which he had for himself alone. And Ehud said, I have a word from Elohim for you. So he rose up out of his seat, and Ehud put forth his hand, and took the dagger from his right thigh, and thrusted it into his belly. And the handle went in after the blade also, and the fat closed upon the blade, so that he could not draw the dagger out of his belly, and dirt came out. Then Ehud went forth through the porch, and shut the doors of the parlor upon him, and locked them. When he was out, his servants came, and behold, when they saw that the doors of the parlor were locked, they said, Surely he covers his feet in his summer chamber. And they tarried until they were ashamed. And behold, he did not open the doors of the parlor. Therefore they took a key and opened. And behold, their lord was fallen down on the earth, dead. And while they tarried, Ehud escaped and passed beyond the graven images, and he escaped to She'arata. And it came to pass when he had come, that he blew a trumpet in the mountain of Ephraim, and the children of Yeshariel went down with him from the mount, and he was before them. Then he said to them, Follow me, for Jehushua has delivered your enemies, Moab, into your hand. And they went down after him, and took the fords of Yarden toward Moab, and did not suffer a man to pass over. And at that time they killed about 10,000 men of Moab, all stout and all men of valor, and no man escaped from there. Therefore Moab was subdued that day under the hand of Yeshariel. Then the land had rest for 80 years. And after him was Shamgar, the son of Anet, who killed 600 men of the Pelishtim with an ox goad, and he delivered Yeshariel also. Chapter 4. And when Ehud was dead, the children of Yeshariel did evil in the sight of Jehushua again. Therefore Jehushua sold them into the hand of Jabin, king of Canaan, who reigned in Katsur. The captain of their army was Sisera, who dwelt in Cherashet of the Gentiles. And the children of Yeshariel cried unto Jehushua, for he had 900 iron chariots, and he mightily oppressed the children of Yeshariel for 20 years. And at that time Deborah, a priestess, the wife of Lapidut, judged Yeshariel. Furthermore, she dwelt under the palm tree of Deborah, between Ramah and Beit Al, in Mount Ephraim. And the children of Yeshariel came up to her for judgment. Then she sent and called Barak, the son of Abinoam, out of Kadesh Naphtali. And she said to him, Has Jehushua Elohim of Yeshariel not commanded, Go and draw toward Mount Tabor, and take 10,000 men of the children of Naphtali, and of the children of Zebulun with you. And I will draw Sisera, the captain of Jabin's army, to you, to the river Kishon, with his chariots and his multitude, but I will deliver him into your hand. However, Barak said to her, If you will go with me, then I will go. But if you will not go with me, I will not go. Therefore she said, Surely I will go with you. However, the journey that you take will not be for your honor, for Jehushua will sell Sisera into the hand of a woman. Then Deborah rose up and went with Barak to Kadesh. And Barak called Zebulun and Naphtali to Kadesh. And he went up with 10,000 men at his feet. Also Deborah went up with him. Now Heber, the Keni, of the children of Chabab, the father-in-law of Musha, had separated himself from the Keni, and pitched his tent toward the plain of Zaanim, which is by Kadesh. And they showed Sisera that Barak, the son of Abinoam, had gone up to Mount Tabor. Therefore Sisera gathered all his chariots together, 900 iron chariots, and all the people who were with him, from Cherashet of the Gentiles to the river of Kishon. And Deborah said to Barak, Arise, for this is the day that Jehushua has delivered Sisera into your hand. Has Jehushua not gone out before you? So Barak went down from Mount Tabor, and 10,000 men followed him. Then Jehushua confused Sisera and all his chariots and his entire army with the edge of the sword before Barak, such that Sisera lifted off his chariot and fled away on his feet. But Barak pursued after the chariots and after the army to Hareshet of the Gentiles, and the entire army of Sisera fell upon the edge of the sword. There was no man left. However, Sisera fled away on his feet to the tent of Jael, the wife of 𝐉𝐄 the Keni, for there was peace between Jabin, the king of Hatzor, and the house of 𝐉𝐄 the Keni. And Jael went out to meet Sisera, and said to him, "Turn in, my lord, turn in to me, do not fear." And when he had turned into her, into the tent, she covered him with a mantle. And he said to her, "Give me, I pray you, a little water to drink, for I am thirsty." So she opened a jug of milk, and she gave him a drink and covered him. Again he said to her, "Stand in the door of the tent, and it will be, when any man comes and inquires of you, and asks, 'Is there any man here?' that you will say no." And Jael, 𝐉𝐄's wife, took a nail from the tent, and took a hammer in her hand, and went softly to him, and struck the nail into his temples, and fastened it into the ground. For he was fast asleep and weary. Thus he died. And behold, as Barak pursued Sisera, Jael came out to meet him, and said to him, "Come, and I will show you the man whom you seek." And when he came into her, behold, Sisera lay dead, and the nail was in his temples. So on that day Elohim subdued Jabin, the king of Canaan, before the children of Yeshariel. And the hand of the children of Yeshariel prospered and prevailed against Jabin, the king of Canaan, until they had destroyed Jabin, the king of Canaan. Chapter 5. And on that day Deborah and Barak, the son of Abinoam, sang, saying, "Praise you, Jehushua, for the avenging of Yeshariel, when the people willingly offered themselves. Hear, O you kings, give ear, O you princes. I am Jehushua. I will sing praises unto Jehushua, Elohim of Yeshariel. Jehushua, when you went out from Sha'er, when you marched out of the field of Adum, the earth trembled and the heavens dropped. Also the clouds dropped water. The mountains melted from before Jehushua, all of Sinai from before Jehushua, Elohim of Yeshariel. In the days of Shamgar, the son of Anat, in the days of Jael, the highways were unoccupied, and the travelers walked through byways. The inhabitants of the villages ceased. They ceased in Yeshariel until I arose. Deborah, I arose a mother in Yeshariel. They chose new deities. Then war was at the gates. Was there a shield or a spear among 40,000 in Yeshariel? My heart is toward the governors of Yeshariel, who willingly offered themselves among the people. Jehushua bless you. Speak, you who ride on white asses, you who sit in judgment and walk by the way, those who are saved from the noise of archers in the places of running water. There they will rehearse the righteous acts of Jehushua, the righteous acts of his villages in Yeshariel. Then the people of Jehushua will go down to the gates. Wake up, Deborah. Wake up, sing a song. Arise, Barak, and capture your captives, O son of Abinoam. Then the remnant came down to the nobles among the people. Jehushua came down to me with the mighty men. Out of Ephraim roots were in Amalek. Benjamin followed you with your people. From Makir leaders descended, and from Zebulun those who draw the writer's quill. And the captains of Yeshachar were with Deborah. So too Yeshachar was with Barak in the valley, sent under his command among the divisions of Reuben, with great thoughts of the heart. Why do you live among the sheepfolds to hear the bleating of the flocks? For there the divisions of Reuben are, with great soul-searching. Gilead abode beyond Yarden. So why did Dan remain in ships? Asher continued on the seashore, and abode in his beaches. Zebulun and Naphtali were a people who jeopardized their lives to the death in the high places of the field. The kings came and fought, and the kings of Canaan fought in Taanach. By the waters of Megiddo, they did not prosper. They fought from the heavens. The stars in their courses fought against Sisera. The winding river swept them away, that ancient river, the river Kishon. She guided my soul. Then the pounding hooves of galloping horses were broken from galloping his mighty ones. Curse you, Meruz, said the angel of Jehushua. Curse its inhabitants bitterly, because they did not come to help Jehushua with the mighty men. Yael, the wife of Heber, the Keni, is blessed above women. She is blessed above women in the tent. He asked for water. She gave milk. She brought butter in a great dish. She put her hand to the nail, and her right hand to the workman's hammer. And with the hammer she struck Sisera, and destroyed his head when she pierced and struck through his temples. At her feet he bowed, he fell, and he laid dead. At her feet he bowed, he fell. Where he bowed, there he fell down dead. The mother of Sisera looked out from the window and cried through the lattice, "Why is his chariot so long in coming? Do the wheels slow down his chariots?" Her wise ladies answered her, "Yes." She returned her answer, "Do they not have speed? Have they not divided the prey? For every man a damsel or two? For Sisera a prey of diverse colors? A needlework prey of diverse colors? Dyed needlework on both sides? Plunder to the neck? Therefore let all your enemies perish, O Jehushua. But let those who love him come out like the sun in its full strength." Thus the land had rest for 40 years. Chapter 6. And the children of Yeshariel did evil in the sight of Jehushua. So Jehushua delivered them into the hand of Midian for 7 years. And the hand of Midian prevailed against Yeshariel. Because of Midian, the children of Yeshariel made themselves dens that are in the mountains, and caves, and strongholds. And so it was when Yeshariel had sown that the Midian came up, and Amalek, and the children of the east, even they came up against them. Moreover, they encamped against them, and destroyed the increase of the earth, until you come to Azza, and they left no sustenance, nor sheep, nor ox, nor ass for Yeshariel. For they came up with their livestock and their tents, and they came up like grasshoppers for multitude. Both they and their camels were without number, and they entered into the land to destroy it. And Yeshariel was greatly impoverished because of Midian. Therefore the children of Yeshariel cried unto Jehushua. And it came to pass, when the children of Yeshariel cried unto Jehushua because of the Midian, then Jehushua sent a prophet to the children of Yeshariel, who said to them, "Thus saith Jehushua, Elohim of Yeshariel, I brought you up from Mitzrayim, and brought you forth out of the house of bondage. And I delivered you out of the hand of the Mitzrayim, and out of the hand of all who oppressed you, and drove them out from before you, and gave you their land. And I said to you, I am Jehushua your Elohim. Do not revere the deities of the Amori, in whose land you dwell, but you have not obeyed my voice." Then an angel of Jehushua came there, and sat under an oak, which is in Abra, that belonged to Joash the Azori. Moreover, his son Gideon threshed wheat in the winepress, to hide it from Midian. Then the angel of Jehushua appeared to him, and said to him, "Jehushua is with you. You are a mighty man of valor." Therefore Gideon said to him, "Adonai, if Jehushua is with us, then why has all this happened to us? And where is all his miracles, which our fathers told us about, saying, Did Jehushua not bring us up out of Mizraim? But now Jehushua has forsaken us, and he has delivered us into the hands of Midian. Then Jehushua looked upon him and said, Go with this strength of yours, and you will save Yashar'el from the hand of Midian. Have you not been sent? And he said to him, Adonai, how will I save Yashar'el? Behold, my family is poor in Manasseh, and I am the least in my father's house. Then Jehushua said to him, Surely I will be with you, and you will strike Midian as a unified man. And he said to him, Now, if I have found grace in your sight, then show me a sign that you speak to me. Do not leave here, I pray you, until I come and bring my present to you, and I have set it before you. Therefore he said, I will wait until you come again. So Gideon went in and prepared a kid and unleavened cakes of an ephah of flour. Then he put the flesh in a basket, and he put the broth in a pot, and brought it out to him under the oak, and presented it. However, the angel of Elohim said to him, Take the flesh and the unleavened cakes, and lay them upon this rock, and pour out the broth. And he did so. Then the angel of Jehushua put forth the end of the staff that was in his hand, and touched the flesh and the unleavened cakes. And fire arose out of the rock, and it consumed the flesh and the unleavened cakes. Then the angel of Jehushua departed from his sight. And when Gideon understood that he was an angel of Jehushua, Gideon said, O Adonai, Jehushua, for I have seen an angel of Jehushua face to face. Therefore Jehushua said to him, Peace be to you, do not fear, you will not die. Then Gideon built an altar unto Jehushua there, and he called it Jehushua Shalom. It is still an Abrah of the Azari to this day. And it came to pass that same night, Jehushua said to him, Take your father's young bullock, even the second bullock of 7 years old, and throw down the altar of Baal that your father has, and cut down the Asherah that is by it, and build an altar unto Jehushua your Elohim upon the top of this rock, in the ordered place. And take the second bullock, and offer an ascension offering with the Asherah wood that you cut down. Then Gideon took 10 of his male servants, and did as Jehushua had said to him. And so it was, because he feared his father's household, and the men of the city, that he did not do it by day, but he did it by night. And when the men of the city arose early in the morning, behold, the altar of Baal was cast down, and the Asherah that was beside it was cut down, and the second bullock was offered upon the built altar. And they said one to another, Who has done this thing? And when they inquired and asked, they said, Gideon, the son of Joash, has done this thing. Then the men of the city said to Joash, Bring out your son, so that he may die, because he has cast down the altar of Baal, and because he has cut down the Asherah that was beside it. Therefore Joash said to all who stood against him, Will you plead for Baal? Will you save him? He who pleads for him, let him be put to death, while it is still morning. If he is a deity, let him plead for himself, because his altar was cast down. Therefore on that day he called him Yarub Baal, saying, Let Baal plead against him, because he has thrown down his altar. Then all the Midian and the Amalek and the children of the east were gathered together, and went over and pitched in the valley of Yezra'al. But the Ruach of Jehushua came upon Gideon, and he blew a trumpet. Then Abiezer gathered behind him, and he sent messengers throughout all Manasseh, who had gathered after him also. And he sent messengers to Asher, and to Zebulun, and to Naphtali, and he came up to meet them. Then Gideon said to Elohim, If you will save Yashar'el by my hand, like you have said, behold, I will put a wool fleece in the floor. If the dew is on the fleece only, and it is dry upon all the earth, Then I will know that you will save Yashar'el by my hand, like you have said. And it was so, for he rose up early on the morrow, and thrust the fleece together, and wrung a bowl full of water out of the fleece. Then Gideon said to Elohim, Do not let your anger be hot against me, and I will speak but this once. Let me prove, I pray you. Now, this time with the fleece, let it be dry upon the fleece only, and let there be dew upon all the ground. Therefore Elohim did so that night, for it was dry upon the fleece only, yet there was dew on all the ground. Chapter 7. Then Reub-Baal, who is Gideon, and all the people who were with him, rose up early and pitched beside the well of Harad, so that the army of Midian was in the valley on the north side of them, by the hill of Moreh. And Jehushua said to Gideon, The people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into your hands, or else Yashar'el will boast against me, saying, My own hand has saved me. Now therefore go proclaim in the ears of the people, saying, Whoever is fearful and afraid, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead early. Therefore 22,000 people returned. However, 10,000 remained there. Then Jehushua said to Gideon, Still the people are too many. Bring them down to the water, and there I will test them for you. And it will be that of whom I say to you, These will go with you, the same will go with you. And of whoever I say to you, These will not go with you, the same will not go. So he brought the people down to the water. And Jehushua said to Gideon, Everyone who laps the water with his tongue, like a dog laps, those you will set by themselves. Likewise, everyone who bows down upon his knees to drink. And the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, were 300 men. But all the rest of the people bowed down upon their knees to drink. Therefore Jehushua said to Gideon, By the 300 who lapped, I will save you and deliver the Midian into your hand, and let all the other people go, every one to his place. So the people took victuals in their hand, and their trumpets, and he sent all the rest of Yashar'el, every man to his tent. But he retained those 300. Furthermore, the Midian encampment was beneath him in the valley. And it came to pass that same night, Jehushua said to him, Arise, get yourself down to the encampment, for I have delivered it into your hand. But if you are afraid to go down, you can go down to the army with Purah, your servant. Then you will hear what they say, and afterward your hand will be strengthened to go down to the army. Then he went down to the armed men who were outside in the encampment, with Purah his servant. And the Midian and the Amalek and all the children of the east laid along in the valley like grasshoppers for multitude, and their camels were without number, like the sand by the seaside for multitude. And when Gideon had come, behold, a man who told a dream to his companion said, Behold, I dreamed a dream, and behold, a cake of barley bread tumbled into the encampment of Midian, and it came to a tent and struck it, so that it fell, and it was overturned, so that the tent collapsed. And his companion answered and said, This is nothing except the sword of Gideon, the son of Joash, the man of Yashar'el, for into his hand Elohim has delivered Midian, and the entire encampment. And it was when Gideon heard the telling of the dream, and the interpretation of it, that he worshipped, and returned into the camp of Yashar'el, and said, Arise, for Jehushua has delivered the army of Midian into your hands. Then he divided the 300 men into 3 companies, and he put a trumpet in every man's hand, with empty pitchers and lamps within their pitchers. And he said to them, Look on me, and do the same. And behold, when I come to the outside of the camp, it will be that, like I do, you will do too. When I blow with a trumpet, I and all who are with me, then you blow the trumpets also, on every side of the entire camp, and say, the sword of Jehushua and of Gideon. So Gideon and 100 men who were with him came to the outside of the camp in the beginning of the middle watch, and they had just newly set the watch, and they blew the trumpets, and broke the pitchers that were in their hands. Therefore the 3 companies blew the trumpets and broke the pitchers, and they held the lamps in their left hands and their trumpets in their right hands to blow. Then they cried, the sword of Jehushua and of Gideon. And every man stood in his place round about the camp. Then the entire camp ran and cried and fled. And the 300 blew the trumpets. And Jehushua set every man's sword against his fellow throughout the entire encampment. And the entire army fled to Beit Hashatha in Zorata, and to the border of Abel-Meholah, to Thabat. Then the men of Yisrael gathered themselves together out of Naphtali, and out of Asher, and out of all Manasseh, and pursued after Midian. And Gideon sent messengers throughout all Mount Ephraim, come down against the Midian, and take before them the waters of Beit Bara and Yarden. Therefore all the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together, and took the waters of Beit Bara and Yarden. And they took 2 captains of Midian, Areb and Zeab, and they slew Areb upon the rock of Areb, and they slew Zeab at the winepress of Zeab, and pursued Midian, and brought the heads of Areb and Zeab to Gideon on the other side of Yarden. Chapter 8. And the men of Ephraim said to him, why have you treated us like this, that you did not call us when you went to fight with Midian? And they contended with him sharply. So he said to them, now what have I done compared to you? Isn't the gleaning of the grapes of Ephraim better than the vintage of Abiezer? Elohim has delivered into your hands the captains of Midian, Areb and Zeab. So what was I able to do compared to you? Then when he had said that, their anger toward him was abated. Furthermore, Gideon came to Yarden and passed over. He and the 300 men who were still pursuing with him were faint. Therefore he said to the men of Sukkot, give, I pray you, loaves of bread to the people who follow me, for they are faint. And I am pursuing after Zebach and to Zalmunna, kings of Midian. However, the captains of Sukkot said, are the hands of Zebach and Zalmunna in your hand now, so that we may give bread to your army? Therefore Gideon said, when Jehushua has delivered Zebach and Zalmunna into my hand, then I will tear your flesh with the thorns and briars of the wilderness. Then he went up to Penuel and spoke to those there likewise. And the men of Penuel answered him like the men of Sukkot had answered. Therefore he spoke to the men of Penuel also, saying, when I come again in peace, I will break down this tower. Now Zebach and Zalmunna were in Kakar, and their army was with them, about 15,000, all who were left of the entire army of the children of the east. For 120,000 men who drew a sword fell there. And when Zebach and Zalmunna fled, he pursued after them, and took the 2 kings of Midian, Zebach and Zalmunna, and terrified the entire army. And Gideon the son of Joash returned from battle before the sun, and caught a young man of the men of Sukkot, and inquired of him. So he described the captains of Sukkot and the elders of it to him, 77 men. Then he came to the men of Sukkot, and said, behold, Zebach and Zalmunna, of whom you ridiculed me, saying, are the hands of Zebach and Zalmunna in your hand now, so that we will give bread to your weary men? Next he took the elders of the city, also thorns and briars of the wilderness. Then he taught the men of Sukkot with them, and he beat down the tower of Penuel and slew the men of the city. Then he asked Zabach and Zalmunna, "What type of men were those you killed in Tabor?" And they answered, "They were like you. Each one resembled the son of a king." And he said, "They were my brethren, the sons of my mother. As Jehushua lives, if you had saved them alive, I would not slay you." And he said to Yeter, his firstborn, "Get up, slay them." But the youth did not draw his sword, for he feared because he was still young. Then Zabach and Zalmunna said, "You arise and fall upon us. For as a man is, so too is his strength." Therefore Gideon arose and slew Zabach and Zalmunna, and took away the ornaments that were on their camels' necks. Then the men of Yeshariel said to Gideon, "Rule over us, both you and your son's son also, for you have delivered us from the hand of Midian." However, Gideon said to them, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. Jehushua will rule over you." Then Gideon said to them, "I desire a request of you, that every man would give me the earrings of his prey," for they had golden earrings, because they were Yishma'alim. Therefore they answered, "We willingly give them." So they spread out a garment, and every man cast the earrings of his prey in it. And the weight of the golden earrings that he requested was 1,700 shekels of gold, beside ornaments and collars, and the purple clothes that was on the kings of Midian, and beside the chains that were around their camels' necks. And of it Gideon made an ephod, and he put it in his city, even to Ophrah. So all Yishariel went there, whoring after it. Therefore it became a trap for Gideon and his house. Thus Midian was subdued before the children of Yishariel, so that they did not lift up their heads any more. And during the days of Gideon, the country was in quietness for 40 years. Moreover, Yerub-Baal, the son of Joash, went and dwelt in his own house. And Gideon had 70 sons, begotten from his body, for he had many wives. And his concubine, who was in Shechem, she bore a son for him also, whose name is called Abimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died in a good old age, and was buried in the sepulchre of Joash his father, in Ophrah al-Azri. And it came to pass, as soon as Gideon was dead, that the children of Yeshariel turned again, and went whoring after the Baalim, and made Baal-Berith their Elohim. Furthermore, the children of Yeshariel did not remember Jehushua their Elohim, who had delivered them out of the hands of all their enemies on every side. Nor did they show kindness to the house of Yerub-Baal, Gideon, according to all the kindness that he had showed to Yeshariel. Chapter 9. And Abimelech, the son of Yerub-Baal, went to Shechem, to his father's brethren, and communed with them, and with the entire family of the house of his mother's father, saying, "Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether it is better for you, either that all the sons of Yerub-Baal, 70 people, reign over you, or that one reigns over you. Remember, I am your bone and your flesh also." Therefore his mother's brethren spoke all these words of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our brother." And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-Berith, of which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless people who followed him. Then he went to his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Yerub-Baal, 70 people upon one stone. However, Yotam, the youngest son of Yerub-Baal, still remained, for he hid himself. Furthermore, all the men of Shechem and all the house of Milah gathered together, Then they went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that is in Shechem. And they told it to Utam. He went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim. Then he lifted up his voice and cried, and said to them, Hearken to me, you men of Shechem, so that Elohim may hearken to you. The trees went forth to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, You will reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, Why should I leave my oil, of which they honor Elohim and men by me, and go to be promoted over the trees? So the trees said to the fig tree, You, come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, Why should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit, and go to be promoted over the trees? So the trees said to the vine, You, come reign over us. But the vine said to them, Why should I leave my wine, which delights Elohim and men, and go to be promoted over the trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, You come, reign over us. Therefore the bramble said to the trees, If you truly anoint me king over you, then come put your trust in my shadow. And if not, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the cedars of Lebanon. Now therefore, if you are true and sincere in what you have done by making Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerub-Baal and his house, and have done to him according to what his hands deserve, because he fought for you, and his life traveled far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian, yet today you have risen up against my father's house, and have killed his sons, 70 people upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his handmaid, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If then you have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerub-Baal and with his house today, then rejoice with Abimelech, and let him rejoice with you also. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem, and the house of Milah. Also let fire come out from the men of Shechem and from the house of Milah, and devour Abimelech. Then Utam ran away and fled, and went to Beerah, and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech his brother. When Abimelech had reigned over Yeshariel for 3 years, then Elohim sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the men of Shechem. And the men of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech, so that the cruelty done to the 70 sons of Jerub-Baal might come, and their blood be laid upon Abimelech their brother, who slew them, and upon the men of Shechem, who aided him in the killing of his brethren. Furthermore, the men of Shechem set men to wait for him on the top of the mountains, and they robbed all who came along that way near them. And this was told to Abimelech. Also Gaal, the son of Obed, came with his brethren, and went over to Shechem, and the men of Shechem put their confidence in him. And they went out into the fields, and gathered their vineyards, and trod their grapes, and made merry, and went into the house of their deity, and ate and drank, and cursed Abimelech. And Gaal, the son of Obed, said, Who is Abimelech, and who is Shechem, that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerub-Baal, and Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Chemur, the father of Shechem. For why should we serve him? If only these people were under my hand, then I would remove Abimelech. Furthermore, he said to Abimelech, Increase your army, and come out. And when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. Therefore he sent messengers to Abimelech secretly, saying, Behold, Gaal, the son of Obed, and his brethren have come to Shechem. And look, they fortified the city against you. Now therefore, get up by night, you and all the people who are with you, and lie in wait in the field. And it will be that in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, You will rise early and set upon the city, and behold, he and the people who are with him will come out against you. Then you may do to them as you find occasion." Therefore Abimelech and all the people who were with him rose up by night, and they laid wait against Shechem in 4 companies. And Gaal the son of Ebed went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city. Then Abimelech and the people who were with him rose up from lying in wait. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, "Behold, people are coming down from the top of the mountains." However, Zebul said to him, "You saw the shadow of the mountains, as if they were men." So Gaal spoke again and said, "See there, people are coming down by the middle of the land. Also, another company is coming from the highest way, from the clouds." Then Zebul said to him, "Where is your mouth now, by which you said, 'Who is Abimelech, that we should serve him?' Is this not the people you have despised? Go out, I pray you, and fight with them." Therefore Gaal went out before the men of Shechem, and fought with Abimelech. However, Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many were overthrown and wounded by the entrance of the gate. Then Abimelech stayed at Arumah. Furthermore, Zebul banished Gaal and his brethren, so that they did not dwell in Shechem. And it came to pass on the morrow that the people went out into the field, and they told Abimelech. Therefore he took the people and divided them into 3 companies. Then he laid wait in the field and watched. And behold, the people came out of the city. So he rose up against them and struck them. Then Abimelech and the company who was with him rushed forward and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city. Also the 2 companies ran upon all who were in the field and slew them. And Abimelech fought against the city the entire day. Then he took the city and slew the people who were in it. Also he beat down the city and sowed it with salt. And when all the men of the tower of Shechem heard of it, they entered into a stronghold of the house of the deity Bereth. And it was told to Abimelech that all the men of the tower of Shechem were gathered together. Therefore Abimelech and all the people who were with him went up to Mount Zalmun. Then Abimelech took an axe in his hand, and cut down the bough from the trees, and took it, and laid it on his shoulder, and said to the people who were with him, "What you have seen me do, make haste and do like I have done." So all the people did likewise. Each man cut down his bough and followed Abimelech. And they put them against the hold, and set the hold on fire upon them, so that all the men of the tower of Shechem died also, about 1,000 men and women. Then Abimelech went to Tebetz, and he encamped at Tebetz, and took it. But there was a strong tower within the city. Therefore all the men and women, and all those from the city, fled there. Then it was shut for them, and they went up to the top of the tower. Also Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it, and went hard to the door of the tower and burnt it with fire. However, a certain woman cast a piece of millstone upon Abimelech's head, and she broke his skull. Then he quickly called to the young man, his armor-bearer, and said to him, "Draw your sword and slay me, so that men do not say of me, 'A woman killed him.'" Therefore his young man thrusted through him, and he died. Then when the men of Yisrael saw that Abimelech was dead, every man departed to his place. Thus Elohim rendered the wickedness of Abimelech, which he did to his father by slaying his 70 brothers. So too all the evil of the men of Shechem Elohim rendered upon their heads. Therefore the curse of Yotam, the son of Yerub-Baal, came upon them. Chapter 10. And after Abimelech, Tola, the son of Puah, the son of Dudu, a man of Issachar, arose to defend Yisrael, and he dwelt in Shemer, in Mount Ephraim. and he judged Yeshareal for 23 years. Then he died and was buried in Shemer. And after him 𝐉𝐄, a Gileadi, arose and judged Yeshareal for 22 years. Moreover, he had 30 sons who rode on 30 ass colts. And they had 30 cities, which are called 𝐉𝐄 to this day, which are in the land of Gilead. Then 𝐉𝐄 died and was buried in Qumran. Furthermore, the children of Yeshareal did evil in the sight of Jehushua again, and served the Baalim, and the Ashtarut, and the deities of Avram, Syria, and the deities of Zidon, and the deities of Moab, and the deities of the children of Ammon, and the deities of the Pelishtim, and forsook Jehushua, and did not serve him. And the anger of Jehushua was hot against Yeshareal, and he sold them into the hands of the Pelishtim, and into the hands of the children of Ammon. Therefore that year they vexed and oppressed the children of Yeshareal for 18 years. All the children of Yeshareal who were on the other side of Yarden, in the land of the Amori, which is Gilead. Also the children of Ammon passed over the Yarden to fight against Yehuda, and against Binyamin, and against the house of Ephraim, so that Yeshareal was very distressed. And the children of Yeshareal cried unto Jehushua, saying, We have sinned against you, both because we have forsaken our Elohim, and have also served the Baalim. Therefore Jehushua said to the children of Yeshareal, Did I not deliver you from the Mitzrayim, and from the Amori, from the children of Ammon, and from the Pelishtim? The Zadunim, and the Amalek, and the Ammon oppressed you also. Then you cried to me, and I delivered you out of their hand. Yet you have forsaken me, and served other deities. Thus I will not deliver you any more. Go and cry to the deities that you have chosen. Let them deliver you during the time of your tribulation. Then the children of Yeshareal said to Jehushua, We have sinned. Do to us whatever seems good to you. Only, we pray you, deliver us today. So they put away the foreign deities from among them, and his soul was grieved by the misery of Yeshareal. Then the children of Ammon were gathered together, and encamped in Gilead. And the children of Yeshareal assembled themselves together, and encamped in Mitzpah. Then the people and captains of Gilead said one to another, Where is there a man who will start fighting against the children of Ammon? He will become the head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. Chapter 11. Now 𝐉𝐄, the Gileadi, was a mighty man of valor. Also he was the son of a harlot, and Gilead begot 𝐉𝐄. So too the wife of Gilead bore him sons. And his wife's sons grew up, and they banished 𝐉𝐄, and said to him, You will not inherit our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. Therefore 𝐉𝐄 fled from his brethren, and dwelt in the land of Dub, and there worthless men were gathered to 𝐉𝐄. Also they went out with him. And it came to pass over time that the children of Ammon made war against Yeshareal. And when the children of Ammon made war against Yeshareal, the elders of Gilead went to fetch 𝐉𝐄 out of the land of Tub. And they said to 𝐉𝐄, Come and be our captain, so that we may fight with the children of Ammon. But 𝐉𝐄 said to the elders of Gilead, Did you not hate me and banish me from my father's house? So why do you come to me now, when you are in distress? Then the elders of Gilead said to 𝐉𝐄, Therefore we return to you now, so that you may go with us and fight against the children of Ammon, and be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. However, 𝐉𝐄 asked the elders of Gilead, If you bring me home again to fight against the children of Ammon, and Jehushua delivers them before me, will I be your head? And the elders of Gilead said to 𝐉𝐄, Jehushua is a witness between us, if we do not do according to your words. Then 𝐉𝐄 went with the elders of Gilead, and the people made him the head and captain over them. And 𝐉𝐄𝐄 uttered all his words before Jehushua in Mitzpah. Also 𝐉𝐄𝐄 sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon, saying, What have you to do with me, that you have come against me to fight in my land? Therefore the king of the children of Ammon answered to the messengers of 𝐉𝐄𝐄, Because Yeshareal took away my land when they came up out of Mitzrayim, from Arnon, even to Yabok and to Yarden. Now therefore restore these lands again, peacefully. So 𝐉𝐄𝐄 sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon again. And they said to him, Thus saith 𝐉𝐄𝐄, Yeshareal did not take away the land of Moab, nor the land of the children of Ammon. However, when Yeshareal came up from Mitzrayim, and walked through the wilderness of the Red Sea, and came to Kadesh, then Yeshareal sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, Let me, I pray you, pass through your land. But the king of Edom would not hearken, and in like manner they sent to the king of Moab, but he would not consent. So Yeshareal abode in Kadesh. Then they went along through the wilderness and encompassed the land of Edom, and the land of Moab. Furthermore, they came by the eastern side of the land of Moab, and pitched on the other side of Arnon. And so they never came within the border of Moab, because Arnon was the border of Moab. Then Yeshareal sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amori, king of Heshbon. And Yeshareal said to him, Let us pass, we pray you, through your land into my place. But Sihon did not trust Yeshareal to pass through his border. Therefore Sihon gathered all his people together, and pitched in Yatzah, and fought against Yeshareal. Therefore Jehushua Elohim of Yeshareal delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Yeshareal, and they struck them. So Yeshareal possessed all the land of the Amori, the inhabitants of that country. And they possessed all the borders of the Amori, from Arnon even to Yabok, and from the wilderness even to Yarden. Now it was Jehushua Elohim of Yeshareal who expelled the Amori from before his people Yeshareal. And will you possess it? Do you not possess that which your deity Chemosh gives you to possess? Likewise, whatever Jehushua our Elohim drives out from before us, that we will possess. And now, are you better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Yeshareal, or did he ever fight against them? Or did he ever fight against them while Yeshareal dwelt in Heshbon and her towns, and in Aroer and her towns, and in all the cities that are beside the borders of Arnon for 300 years? Why then have you not recovered them within that time? Why? I have not sinned against you, yet you do me wrong to war against me. Jehushua will judge the judgment today between the children of Yeshareal and the children of Ammon. However, the king of the children of Ammon did not hearken to the words of 𝐉𝐄𝐄, which he sent him. Then the Ruach of Jehushua came upon 𝐉𝐄𝐄, and he passed over Gilead and Manasseh, and passed over Mitzpah of Gilead, and from Mitzpah of Gilead he passed over the children of Ammon. Also 𝐉𝐄𝐄 vowed a vow unto Jehushua, and said, If you will give me a deliverance of the children of Ammon into my hands, then it will be that whatever comes forth from the doors of my house to meet me when I return from the children of Ammon, let it be unto Jehushua, and it will be an ascension offering for him. Then 𝐉𝐄𝐄 passed over to the children of Ammon to fight against them, and Jehushua delivered them into his hands. Moreover, he struck them from Aroer even until you come to Menith, 20 cities, and to the plain of the vineyard, with a very great slaughter. Thus the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Yeshareal. Then 𝐉𝐄𝐄 came to Mitzpah, to his house, and behold, his daughter came out to meet him with timbrels and with dances, and she was his only child. Beside her He did not have another son or daughter. And it came to pass, when he saw her, he tore his clothes and said, Alas, my daughter, you have brought me very low, and you are one of those who trouble me. For I have opened my mouth unto 𝐉𝐄𝐄, and I cannot go back. And she said to him, My father, if you have opened your mouth unto 𝐉𝐄𝐄, do to me according to that which has proceeded out of your mouth. For as much as 𝐉𝐄𝐄 has taken vengeance for you of your enemies, of the children of Ammon. Then she said to her father, Allow this thing to be done for me. Let me alone for 2 months, so that I may go up and down upon the mountain, and bewail my virginity, my companions and I. Therefore he said, Go. And he sent her away for 2 months, and she went with her companions and bewailed her virginity upon the mountains. And it came to pass at the end of 2 months that she returned to her father, who did with her according to his vow, which he had vowed, and she knew no man. Therefore it is a custom in Yashareal that the daughters of Yashareal went annually to lament the daughter of Jephthah the Gileadi for 4 days during the year. Chapter 12. And the men of Ephraim gathered themselves together. Then they went northward and said to Jephthah, Why did you pass over to fight against the children of Ammon, and did not call us to go with you? We will burn your house with fire upon you. Therefore Jephthah said to them, My people and I had great strife with the children of Ammon, but when I called you, you did not deliver me out of their hands. So when I saw that you did not deliver me, I put my life in my own hands, and passed over against the children of Ammon. Then 𝐉𝐄𝐄 delivered them into my hand. Why then have you come up to me today, to fight against me? Then Jephthah gathered all the men of Gilead together, and fought with Ephraim. And the men of Gilead struck Ephraim, because they said, You Gilead are fugitives of Ephraim, among the Ephraim, and among the Manasseh. So Gilead took the passages of Yarden ahead of the Ephraim. Then when the Ephraim who had escaped said, Let me go over, the men of Gilead asked them, Are you an Ephrati? If he said no, then they told him, Now say Shibboleth. But if he said Sibboleth, because he could not pronounce it right, then they took him and killed him at the passages of Yarden. Thus 42,000 Ephraim died there during this time. And Jephthah judged Yashareal for 6 years. Then Jephthah the Gileadi died, and was buried in one of the cities of Gilead. And after him Abizan of Beit Lechem judged Yashareal. Moreover, he had 30 sons and 30 daughters, whom he sent abroad. And he took for his sons 30 daughters from abroad, and he judged Yashareal for 7 years. Then Abizan died, and was buried at Beit Lechem. And after him Ailun a Zebuluni judged Yashareal, and he judged Yashareal for 10 years. Then Ailun the Zebuluni died, and was buried in Ailun, in the country of Zebulun. And after him Abdon, the son of Hillel, a Pirathuni, judged Yashareal. Moreover, he had 40 sons and 30 nephews, who rode on 70 ass colts, and he judged Yashareal for 8 years. Then Abdon, the son of Hillel, the Pirathuni, died, and was buried in Pirathun, in the land of Ephraim, in the mount of Amalek. Chapter 13. And the children of Yashareal did evil in the sight of 𝐉𝐄𝐄 again, and 𝐉𝐄𝐄 delivered them into the hand of the Philistine for 40 years. And there was a certain man of Zaro, of the family of the Dani, whose name was Manuach, and his wife was barren, and did not bear. Then an angel of 𝐉𝐄𝐄 appeared to the woman, and said to her, Behold now, you are barren, and do not bear, but you will conceive and bear a son. Now therefore beware, I pray you, and do not drink wine nor strong drink, and do not eat anything unclean. For behold, you will conceive and bear a son, and no razor will come upon his head. For the child will be a Nazir unto Elohim from the womb. And he will begin to deliver Yeshariel out of the hand of the Philistine. Then the woman came and told her husband, saying, A man of Elohim came to me, and his countenance was like the countenance of an angel of Elohim, very fearsome. But I did not ask him from where, nor did he tell me his name. However, he said to me, Behold, you will conceive and bear a son. And now do not drink any wine or strong drink, nor eat anything unclean. For the child will be a Nazir unto Elohim, from the womb until the day he dies. Then Manoach entreated Jehushua and asked, Adonai, let the man of Elohim, who you sent to us, come again, and teach us what we will do for the child who will be born. Therefore Elohim hearkened to the voice of Manoach, and the angel of Elohim came to the woman again while she sat in the field. But Manoach, her husband, was not with her. So the woman hurried and ran. Then she showed her husband and said to him, Behold, the man who came to me the other day has appeared to me. So Manoach arose and followed his wife, and came to the man and asked him, Are you the man who spoke to the woman? And he said, I am. Then Manoach asked, Now let your words come to pass. How will we direct the child, and what will we do for him? Therefore the angel of Jehushua said to Manoach, Of all that I said to the woman, let her beware. She may not eat anything that comes of the vine, nor let her drink wine or strong drink, nor eat anything unclean. All that I command her, let her observe. Then Manoach said to the angel of Jehushua, I pray you, let us detain you until we have prepared a kid for you. But the angel of Jehushua said to Manoach, Though you detain me, I will not eat of your bread. And if you offer an ascension offering, you must offer it to Jehushua. For Manoach did not know that he was an angel of Jehushua. Then Manoach said to the angel of Jehushua, What is your name? So that when your word comes to pass, we may honor you. And the angel of Jehushua said to him, Why do you ask this? For my name, seeing it is a secret. So Manoach took the kid with a memorial offering and offered it upon a rock unto Jehushua. Then it did wondrously. Also Manoach and his wife saw, for it came to pass when the flame went up toward the heavens from off the rock, that the angel of Jehushua ascended in the flame of the altar, and Manoach and his wife saw it. Then they fell to the ground on their faces. Moreover, the angel of Jehushua did not appear to Manoach and to his wife any more. Then Manoach knew that he was an angel of Jehushua. Therefore Manoach said to his wife, Surely we will die, because we have seen Elohim. But his wife said to him, If it pleases Jehushua to kill us, he would not have received an ascension offering and a memorial offering from our hands, nor would he have shown us all these things, nor would he have told us such things as this at this time. Therefore the woman bore a son and called his name Shimron. Moreover, the child grew, and Jehushua blessed him. Also the Ruach of Jehushua began to stir him at times in the camp of Dan, between Zaro and Ashdual. Chapter 14. And Shimron went down to Timnatah, and saw a woman in Timnatah, from the daughters of the Philistine. Therefore he came up and told his father and his mother, and said, I have seen a woman from Timnatah, from the daughters of the Philistine. Now therefore get her for me, for a wife. However his father and mother said to him, Is there not a woman among the daughters of your brethren, or among my people, that you would go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistine? Therefore Shimron said to his father, Get her for me, for she pleases me greatly." However, his father and mother did not know that it was from Jehushua that he sought an occasion against the Palestine, for at that time the Palestine had dominion over Yisrael. Then Shimron and his father and his mother went down to Timnah. Then they came to the vineyards of Timnah, and behold, a young lion roared against him. Therefore the ruach of Jehushua came upon him mightily, and he tore him like he would have tore a kid. Yet nothing was in his hand. Also he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and she pleased Shimron greatly. And after a time he returned to take her. But he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and saw a swarm of bees and honey in the carcass of the lion. Therefore he took it in his hands and went on eating. Then he came to his father and mother, and he gave to them, and they ate. But he did not tell them that he had taken the honey out of the carcass of a lion. So his father went down to the woman, and Shimron made a feast there. For thus the young men did. And it came to pass when they saw him, that they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Shimron said to them, "Now I will put forth a riddle for you. Surely if you can declare it to me within the 7 days of the feast, and discover it, then I will give you 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments. But if you cannot declare it to me, then you will give me 30 sheets and 30 changes of garments." And they said to him, "Put forth your riddle, so that we may hear it." So he said to them, "Out of the eater comes forth food, and out of the strong comes forth sweetness." And during 3 days they could not discover the riddle. And it came to pass on the 7th day that they said to Shimron's wife, "Entice your husband, so that he may declare the riddle to us, or else we will burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you not invited us to take what we have?" Therefore Shimron's wife wept before him, and said, "Surely you hate me, and do not love me. You have put forth a riddle to the children of my people, and have not explained it to me." And he said to her, "Behold, I have not told it to my father and mother, so why would I tell it to you?" Therefore she wept before him during the 7 days, while their feast lasted. And it came to pass on the 7th day that he told her, because she laid heavy upon him. Then she told the riddle to the children of her people. Moreover, the men of the city said to him, on the 7th day before the sun went down, "What is sweeter than honey? And what is stronger than a lion?" Therefore he said to them, "If you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have discovered my riddle." Then the ruach of Jehushua came upon him. So he went down to Ashkelon and killed 30 of their men. Then he took their plunder and gave a change of garments to those who discovered the riddle. But his anger was kindled, and he went up to his father's house. So the wife of Shimron went to his companion, who had been a friend to him. Chapter 15. And it came to pass after this, during the time of the wheat harvest, that Shimshon visited his wife with a kid, and he said, "I will go in to my wife, into the chamber." However, her father would not suffer him to go in, and her father said, "I thought that you hated her completely, so I gave her to your companion. Is her younger sister not more fair than she? I pray you, take her instead." And Shimshon said concerning them, "Now I will be more blameless than the Palestine, although I do them displeasure." Then Shimshon went and caught 300 foxes, and he took firebrands. Then he turned them tail to tail, and put a firebrand in the middle between the 2 tails. And when he set the brands on fire, he let them go into the standing grain of the Palestine, and burnt up both the stalks and the standing grain, also with the vineyards and olives. Therefore the Philistines said, "Who has done this?" And they answered, "Shimshun, the son-in-law of Timni, because he had taken his wife and given her to his companion." So the Philistine came up and burnt her and her father with fire. And Shimshun said to them, "Surely you have done this. Surely I will have revenge on you. After that I will stop." And he struck their hip and thigh with a great slaughter. Also he went down and dwelt in the top of the rock 𝐉𝐿. Therefore the Philistine went up and pitched in Yehudah and spread themselves in Lachi. So the men of Yehudah asked, "Why have you come up against us?" And they answered, "To capture Shimshun. We have come up to do to him like he has done to us." Therefore 3,000 men of Yehudah went to the top of the rock 𝐉𝐿 and said to Shimshun, "Do you not know that the Philistines are rulers over us? What is this that you have done to us?" And he said to them, "As they have done to me, so I have done to them." Therefore they said to him, "We have come to capture you, so that we may deliver you into the hand of the Philistines." And Shimshun said to them, "Swear to me that you will not fall upon me yourselves." Then they spoke to him, saying, "No, but we will bind and deliver you into their hand. But surely we will not kill you." Next they bound him with 2 new cords and brought him up from the rock. When he came to Lachi, the Philistines shouted against him. Then the Ruach of Jehushua came upon him mightily, and the cords that were upon his arms became like flax that was burnt with fire, and his bounds loosened off of his hands. Then he found a new jawbone of an ass, and put forth his hand, and took it, and slew 1,000 men with it. And Shimshun said, "With the jawbone of an ass, heaps upon heaps, with the jawbone of an ass, I have slain 1,000 men." And it came to pass, when he had made an end of speaking, that he cast away the jawbone out of his hand, and called that place Ramat Lachi. Then he became very thirsty. So he called on Jehushua and said, "You have given this great deliverance into the hand of your servant, and now will I die of thirst, and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" Therefore Elohim split the hollow place that was in the jaw, and there water came out of it. And when he had drunk, the Ruach came again, and revived him. Because of this he called the name of it Ein HaKorah, which is in Lachi to this day. And during the days of the Philistines, he judged Yisrael for 20 years. Chapter 16. Then Shimshun went to Uzzah, and there was a harlot, and he went to her. And it was told to the Atzi, saying, "Shimshun has come here." Therefore they encircled, and they laid wait for him all night in the gate of the city, and were quiet all night, saying, "In the morning, when it is day, we will kill him." Furthermore, Shimshun laid until midnight, and arose at midnight, and took the doors of the gate of the city, and its 2 posts. Then he put them upon his shoulders, and went away with them, bars and all. Also he carried them up to the top of a hill that is before Hebron. And it came to pass, afterward, that he loved a woman in the valley of Sharek, whose name was Delilah. And the lords of the Philistines came up to her, and said to her, "Entice him, and see from what is his great strength, and by what means we may prevail against him, so we may bind him to afflict him, and we, each man, will give you 1,100 pieces of silver." Therefore Delilah said to Shimshun, "Tell me, I pray you, in what lies your strength? And by what might you be bound to afflict you?" And Shimshun said to her, "If they bind me with 7 green bowstrings that were never dyed, then I will be weak, and be like another Adam." Therefore the lords of the Philistines brought 7 green bowstrings, which had never been dyed, up to her, and she bound him with them. Now men were lying in wait, staying with her in the chamber. And she said to him, "Shimshon, the Philistine are upon you." So he broke the bowstrings, like a thread of yarn is broken when it touches the fire. Therefore his strength was not known. Then Delilah said to Shimshon, "Behold, you have mocked me, and told me lies. Now tell me, I pray you, by what might you be bound?" And he said to her, "If they bind me tight with new ropes that never were occupied, then I will be weak and be like another Adam." Therefore Delilah took new ropes and bound him with it, and said to him, "Shimshon, the Philistine are upon you." Also liars in wait were staying in the chamber, but he broke them off of his arms like a thread. Then Delilah said to Shimshon, "Up until now you have mocked me and told me lies. Tell me by what you might be bound." And he said to her, "If you weave the 7 locks of my head into a weave." Therefore she fastened it with a batten, and said to him, "Shimshon, the Philistine are upon you." So he awoke from his sleep, and went away with the batten of a loom and with the weave. Then she said to him, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me? You have mocked me these 3 times, and have not told me in what your great strength lies." And it came to pass, when she pressed him daily with her words, and urged him, that his soul was vexed to death, that he told her all his heart, and said to her, "A razor has not come upon my head, for I have been a Nazir to Elohim from my mother's womb. If I am shaven, then my strength will go from me, and I will become weak, and be like another Adam." And when Delilah saw that he had told her all his heart, she sent and called the lords of the Philistine, saying, "Come up at once, for he has showed me all his heart." Therefore the lords of the Philistine came up to her, and brought money in their hand, and she made him sleep upon her knees. And she called for a man, and she caused him to shave off the 7 locks of his head. So she began to afflict him, and his strength went from him. Moreover she said, "Shimshon, the Philistine are upon you." And he woke out of his sleep and said, "I will go out like the previous times, and shake myself." However, he did not know that Jehushua had departed from him. Therefore the Philistine took him, and put out his eyes, and brought him down to Azza, and bound him with copper cuffs, and he milled in the prison house. However, the hair of his head began to grow again, after he was shaven. Then the lords of the Philistine gathered themselves together to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon, their deity, and to rejoice. For they said, "Our deity has delivered Shimshon, our enemy, into our hand." And when the people saw him, they praised their deity, for they said, "Our deity has delivered into our hand our enemy, and the destroyer of our country, who slew many of us." And it came to pass, when their hearts were merry, that they said, "Call for Shimshon, so that he will make us laugh." And they called for Shimshon out of the prison house, and they laughed. Then they set him between the pillars, and Shimshon said to the lad who held him by the hand, "Allow me to feel the pillars upon which this house stands, so that I may lean upon them." Now the house was full of men and women, and all the lords of the Philistine were there. And upon the roof were about 3,000 men and women, who laughed while they saw Shimshon. Then Shimshon called unto Jehushua and said, "Adonai, Jehushua, remember me, I pray you, and strengthen me, I pray you, only this once. O Elohim, that I may be avenged of the Philistine in an instant for my 2 eyes." Next Shimshon took hold of the 2 middle pillars upon which the house stood, and he braced himself against them, one with his right hand and one with his left. Furthermore Shimshon said, "Let me die with the Philistine." Then he bowed himself mightily, and the house fell upon the lords, and upon all the people who were in it. Therefore the dead who he slew during his death were more than those he slew during his life. Then his brethren and the entire house of his father came down, and took him, and brought him up, and buried him between Zaro and Ashtual, in the burial place of Manoach his father. Thus he judged Yeshariel for 20 years. Chapter 17. And there was a man of Mount Ephraim, whose name was 𝐉𝐄, and he said to his mother, The 1,100 shekels of silver that were taken from you, about which you swore, and also spoke of in my ears, behold, the silver is with me, I took it. And the woman said, You are endowed by he who exists, my son. And when he restored the 1,100 shekels of silver to his mother said, I have completely dedicated the silver to he who exists from my hand, for my son, to make a graven image and a mask. Now therefore, I return it to you. Still he returned the money to his mother. But his mother took 200 shekels of silver and gave them to a founder, who made a statue and a mask from it. And they were in the house of 𝐉𝐄. Furthermore, the man Micah had a house of deities, and made an ephod and cherubim, and consecrated the hand of one of his sons, who became his priest. In those days there was no king in Yisrael. Every man did what was right in his own eyes. Furthermore, there was a young man from Beit Lechem Yehuda, of the family of Yehuda, who was a Lewi, and he sojourned there. However, the man left the city from Beit Lechem Yehuda to sojourn where he could find a place, and he came to Mount Ephraim, to the house of Micah, as he sojourned. And Micah asked him, From where have you come? And he answered him, I am a Lewi, from Beit Lechem Yehuda, and I come to sojourn where I may find a place. Therefore Micah said to him, Dwell with me, and be a father and a priest for me, and I will give you 10 shekels of silver per year, and a suit of apparel, and your victuals. So the Lewi went in, and the Lewi was content to dwell with the man, and the young man was like one of his sons to him. Moreover, Micah consecrated the hand of the Lewi, and the young man became his priest, and was in the house of Micah. Then Micah said, Now I know that he who exists will do good to me, for I have a Lewi to be a priest. Chapter 18. In those days there was no king in Yisrael, and in those days the tribe of Dani sought an inheritance to dwell in for themselves. For in that day their inheritance had not fallen to them among the tribes of Yisrael. Therefore the children of Dan sent 5 men of valor from their family, from their borders, from Zaro and from Ashdual, to spy out the land and search it. And they said to them, Go search the land. So they came to Mount Ephraim, to the house of Micah, and lodged there. When they were by the house of Micah, they recognized the voice of the young man, the Lewi. Therefore they turned in there and asked him, Who brought you here? And what are you doing here? And what is this place to you? So he answered them, Thus and thus Micah deals with me. Also he has hired me, and I am his priest. Then they said to him, We pray you, ask counsel of Elohim, so that we may know if the way in which we go will be prosperous. And the priest said to them, Go in peace, the way in which you go is before Jehushua. So the 5 men departed, and came to Laisha, and saw the people who were in it, how they lived carefree, following the manner of the Zadunim, quiet and secure. Also there was no magistrate in the land, who might put them to shame in anything. Also they were far from the Zadunim, and had no dealings with any Adam. Then they came to their brethren, to Zaro and Ashdual. And their brethren said to them, What say you? And they said, Arise, that we may go up against them. For we have seen the land, and behold, it is very good. Yet you are still. Do not hesitate. Go to possess the land. When you go, you will go to a secure people, and a large land. For Elohim has given it into your hands, a place where there is no want for anything that is in the earth. And from there 600 appointed men from the family of the Dani left, out of Zaro and out of Ashdual, with weapons of war. And they went up and pitched in Kiryat Yarim. This is why they call that place Machne Dan to this day. Behold, it is behind Kiryat Yarim. And they passed there to Mount Apraim, and came to the house of Micah. Then the 5 men who went to spy out the country of Laisha answered and said to their brethren, Do you know that there is an ipud, and terapim, and a statue, and a mask in these houses? Now therefore consider what you will do. After this they turned and came to the house of the young man, the Lehi, to the house of Micah, and greeted him. Also the 600 appointed men with their weapons of war, who were of the tribe of Dan, stood by the entrance of the gate. Then the 5 men who went to spy out the land went up, came in there, took the statue, and the epud, and the terapim, and the mask. Moreover, the priest stood in the entrance of the gate with the 600 appointed men with weapons of war. Furthermore, they went into Micah's house, and fetched the statue, the epud, and the terapim, and the mask. Then the priest asked them, What are you doing? Therefore they answered him, Hold your peace, lay your hand upon your mouth, and come with us, and be a father and a priest to us. Is it better for you to be a priest for the house of one man, or that you become a priest for a family and a tribe in Yeshariel? Therefore the priest's heart was glad, and he took the epud and the terapim and the statue, and went in the midst of the people. Then they turned and departed, and they put the little ones, and the livestock, and the carriage before them. When they were a good way from the house of Micah, the men who were in the houses nearby Micah's house were gathered together, and overtook the children of Dan. And they cried out to the children of Dan. So they turned their faces and said to Micah, What ails you, that you come with such a company? And he said, You have taken away my deities, which I made, and the priest, and you have gone away. And what more do I have? And why is it that you ask me, What ails you? Next, the children of Dan said to him, Do not let your voice be heard among us, or else angry fellows will run upon you, and you will lose your life, with the lives of your household. Then the children of Dan went their way, and when Micah saw that they were too strong for him, he returned and went back to his house. Therefore they took what Micah had made, the priest that he had, and went to Laisha, to a people who were quiet and secure. Then they struck them with the edge of the sword, and burnt the city with fire. And there was no deliverer, because it was far from Zidon, and they had no dealings with any Adam. And it was in the valley that lies by Beit Rahub, and they built a city and dwelt in it. Furthermore, they called the name of the city Dan, after the name of Dan their father, who was born to Yeshariel. However, the previous name of the city was Laisha, and the children of Dan set up the statue. Also Jehunatan, the son of Gershon, the son of Menashe, he and his sons were priests to the tribe of Dan, until the day of the captivity from the land. Furthermore, they set up Micah's statue, which he made for themselves, the entire time that the house of Elohim was in Shiloh. Chapter 19. And it came to pass during those days, when there was no king in Yeshariel, that there was a certain Lehi sojourning on the side of Mount Apraim, who took a concubine out of Beit Lechem, Yehuda, for himself. However, his concubine played the whore against him, and went away from him to her father's house, to Beit Lechem, Yehuda, and was there 4 whole months. Therefore her husband arose, and went after her, to speak friendly to her, to bring her again, having his servant and a couple of asses with him. Then she brought him into her father's house, and when the father of the damsel saw him, he rejoiced to meet him. Also his father-in-law, the damsel's father, retained him, and he stayed with him for 3 days. So they ate and drank and lodged there. And it came to pass on the 4th day, when they arose early in the morning, that he got up to leave. But the damsel's father said to his son-in-law, "Comfort your heart with a morsel of bread, and afterward go your way." And they sat down, and ate and drank, both of them together. For the damsel's father had said to the man, "I pray you, be content and tarry all night, and let your heart be merry." Moreover, when the man got up to leave, his father-in-law urged him. Therefore he lodged there again, and he arose early in the morning on the 5th day to depart. But the damsel's father said, "I pray you, comfort your heart." So they tarried until afternoon, and they ate, both of them. And when the man got up to leave, he and his concubine and his servant, his father-in-law, the damsel's father, said to him, "Behold, now the day draws toward evening. I pray you, tarry all night. Behold, the day grows to an end. Lodge here, so that your heart may be merry. And tomorrow get yourself on your way early, that you may go home." However, the man would not tarry that night. Instead, he got up and left, and he went towards Yebus, which is Jerusalem. And there were 2 saddled asses with him. Also his concubine was with him. When they were by Yebus, the day was far spent. And the servant said to his master, "Come, I pray you, and let us turn into the city of the Yebusi, and lodge in it." However, his master said to him, "We will not turn aside here into the city of a foreigner, which is not of the children of Yeshariel. We will pass over to 𝐤𝐄𝐄. Then he said to his servant, "Come, let us draw near to one of these places to lodge all night, in 𝐤𝐄𝐄, or in Ramah." Therefore they passed on and went their way, and the sun went down upon them by 𝐤𝐄𝐄, which belongs to Benjamin, and they turned aside there to go lodge in 𝐤𝐄𝐄. And when he went in, he sat himself down in a street of the city, for there was no man who would take them into his house for lodging. And behold, at evening, an old man came from his work out in the field, who was from Mount Ephraim also. However, he sojourned in 𝐤𝐄𝐄, but the men of the place were Benjamin. And when he lifted up his eyes, he saw the traveling man in the street of the city. And the old man said, "Where are you going? And where have you come from?" So he answered him, "We are passing from Beit-Lehem, Yehuda, toward the side of Mount Ephraim. I am from there. And I went to Beit-Lehem, Yehuda, but I am going to the house of Jehushua. However, there is no man who will receive me to lodge. Yet there is both straw and provender for my asses. Also there is bread and wine for me, and for your handmaid, and for the young man who is with your servants. There is no need of anything." Then the old man said, "Peace be with you. Only let all your needs be upon me. Just don't lodge in the street." So he brought him into his house, and gave provender to the asses. Then they washed their feet, and ate and drank. As they were making their hearts merry, behold, the men of the city, certain sons of worthlessness, surrounded the house round about. They beat at the door, and spoke to the master of the house, the old man, saying, "Bring forth the man who came into your house, that we may know him." Therefore the man, the master of the house, went out to them, and said to them, "No, my brethren, I pray you, do no wickedness. Seeing that this man has come into my house, do not do this folly. Behold my daughter, a maiden, and his concubine. I will bring them now, and you can humble them, and do to them what seems good to you. But do not do a vile thing to this man." However, the men would not hearken to him. So the man took his concubine, and brought her forth to them, and they knew her, and abused her all night until morning. And when the day began to spring, they let her go. Then, during the dawning of the day, the woman came and fell down at the door of the man's house where her lord was, until it was light. And in the morning her lord got up. Then he opened the doors of the house and went out to go his way. And behold, the woman, his concubine, had fallen down by the door of the house, and her hands were upon the threshold. Then he said to her, Get up, let us be going. But there was no answer. Therefore he took her upon an ass, and the man. Then he went to his place. Furthermore, when he came into his house, he took a knife and laid hold on his concubine, and divided her with her bones into 12 pieces, and sent them into all the borders of Yisrael. Thus it was that all who saw it said, Never has there been done nor seen such a deed as this, from the day that the children of Yisrael came out from the land of Mitzrayim to this day. Consider it, take advice, and speak. Chapter 20. Then all the children of Yisrael went out, and the congregation was gathered together like one man, from Dan even to Be'er-sheba, with the land of Gilead, unto Jehushua in Mitzpah. And the chiefs of all the people of all the tribes of Yisrael presented themselves in the assembly of the people of Elohim, 400,000 footmen, who drew a sword. Now the children of Benjamin heard that the children of Yisrael had gone up to Mitzpah. Then the children of Yisrael asked, Tell us, what was this wickedness? Therefore the Lehi, the husband of the woman who was slain, answered and said, I came into 𝐤𝐄𝐅, which belongs to Benjamin, my concubine and I, to lodge. And by night the men of 𝐤𝐄𝐅 rose up against me, and surrounded the house round about upon me. They intended to kill me, but they ravished my concubine, and she died. So I took my concubine and cut her in pieces, and sent her throughout the entire country of the inheritance of Yisrael, for they have committed lewdness and folly in Yisrael. Behold, you are all children of Yisrael. Give here your advice and counsel. And all the people rose up as one man, saying, None of us will go to his tent, nor will we return to our house. But now this is the thing that we will do to 𐤄𝐄𝐅. We will go up against it by lot. And we will take 10 men out of 100 throughout all the tribes of Yisrael, and 100 out of 1,000, and 1,000 out of 10,000, to fetch victuals for the people, so they may do accordingly to all the folly that they have worked in Yisrael, when they go to 𝐤𝐄𝐅 of Benjamin. Therefore all the men of Yisrael gathered against the city, knit together like one man. And the tribes of Yisrael sent men throughout all the tribes of Benjamin, saying, What is this wickedness that is done among you? Now therefore deliver the men, the sons of worthlessness, who are in 𝐤𝐄𝐅, to us, so that we may put them to death, and put away this evil from Yisrael. But the children of Benjamin would not hearken to the voice of their brethren, the children of Yisrael. Instead, the children of Benjamin gathered themselves together out of the cities to 𐤄𝐄𝐅, to go out to battle against the children of Yisrael. And at that time the children of Benjamin numbered 26,000, who drew a sword out of the cities, beside the inhabitants of 𝐤𝐄𝐅, who had numbered 700 chosen men. Among these men were 700 chosen left-handed men. Each one could sling stones at a hair and not miss. However, the men of Yisrael, beside Benjamin, numbered 400,000 men who drew a sword. All of them were men of war. Therefore the children of Yisrael arose and went up to the house of Elohim, and asked counsel of Elohim, and said, Which of us will go up first to the battle against the children of Benjamin? And Jehushua said, Yehuda is first. Then the children of Yisrael rose up in the morning, and encamped against 𝐤𝐄𝐅. And the men of Yisrael went out to battle against Benjamin. And the men of Yisrael put themselves in array to fight against them at 𝐤𝐄𝐅. Moreover, the children of Benjamin came forth out of 𝐤𝐄𝐅, and they destroyed 2,000 men of Yisrael from the land that day. But the people, the men of Yisrael, encouraged themselves, and set their battle again in array in a place where they put themselves in array the first time. And the children of Yisrael went up and wept before Jehushua until evening, and asked counsel of Jehushua, saying, Should I go up again to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother? And Jehushua said, Go up against him. Therefore the children of Yisrael came near against the children of Benjamin the second day. And Benjamin went forth against them outside of Gibeat the second day. And they destroyed 18,000 men of the children of Yisrael from the land. All these drew the sword. Then all the children of Yisrael and all the people went up, and came to the house of Elohim, and wept, and sat there before Jehushua, and fasted that day until evening, and offered ascension offerings, and restoration sacrifices before Jehushua. For the ark of the covenant of Elohim was there in those days. Also Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aharon, stood before it in those days. Moreover, the children of Yisrael inquired of Jehushua, saying, Should I still go out to battle against the children of Benjamin, my brother, again, or should I stop? And Jehushua said, Go up, for tomorrow I will deliver it into your hand. Therefore Yisrael set liers in wait round about Gibeat. Then on the third day the children of Yisrael went up against the children of Benjamin, and put themselves in array against Gibeat, like the other times. Furthermore, the children of Benjamin set out against the people, but they were drawn away from the city, and they began to strike the people, killing like the other times, in the highways of which one goes up to the house of Elohim, and the other to Gibeat, in the field, about 30 men of Yisrael. Therefore the children of Benjamin said, They are beaten down before us, like before. However, the children of Yisrael said, Let us flee and draw them away from the city to the highways. Therefore all the men of Yisrael rose up out of their place, and put themselves in array to Baal Tamar. Then the liers in wait of Yisrael came forth out of their places, out of the meadows of Gibeat. And there 10,000 chosen men of all Yisrael came out against Gibeat, and the battle was fierce. However, they did not know that evil was near them. Then Jehushua struck Benjamin before Yisrael, and the children of Yisrael destroyed 25,100 men of Benjamin. All these drew the sword. Moreover, the children of Benjamin saw that they were beaten, for the men of Yisrael gave place to the Benjamin, because they trusted the liers in wait, which they had set against Gibeat. And the liers in wait hurried and rushed upon Gibeat, and the liers in wait drew along and struck and entered the city with the edge of the sword. Now there was an appointed sign between the men of Yisrael and the liers in wait, so that they will make a great flame with smoke rise up out of the city. And when the men of Yisrael retired in the battle, Benjamin began to strike, killing the men of Yisrael, about 30 people. For they said, Surely they are beaten down before us, like the first battle. But when the flame began to rise up out of the city with a pillar of smoke, Benjamin looked behind themselves, and behold, the flame of the city ascended up to the heavens. And when the men of Yisrael turned again, the men of Benjamin were amazed, for they saw that evil had come upon them. Therefore they turned before the men of Yisrael to the way of the wilderness, but the battle overtook them, and those who came out of the cities, they destroyed them in the midst. They enclosed Benjamin round about, chased him, trampled him down with ease over against Gibeat towards the east. And there 18,000 men of Benjamin fell. All these were men of valor. Then they turned and fled toward the wilderness to the rock of Rimmon. And they gleaned 5,000 men among them in the highways, and pursued after them hard to Gidon, and slew 2,000 men among them, so that all who fell that day of Benjamin were 25,000 men who drew the sword, All of these were men of valor. But 600 men turned and fled to the wilderness, to the rock Rimmon, and stayed in the rock Rimmon for 4 months. And the men of Yeshareal turned again upon the children of Benjamin, and struck them with the edge of the sword, as well as the men of every city, and the beast, and all who came to hand. Also they set all the cities that they came to on fire. Chapter 21. Now the men of Yeshareal had sworn in Mitzpah, saying, None of us will give his daughter to Benjamin for a wife. Therefore the people came to the house of Elohim, and stayed before Elohim until evening, and lifted up their voices, and wept greatly, and said, O 𝐉𝐄𝐄, Elohim of Yeshareal, why has this come to pass in Yeshareal, that there will be one tribe missing in Yeshareal today? And it came to pass on the morrow, that the people rose early, and built an altar there, and offered ascension offerings and sacrifices of restoration. Moreover, the children of Yeshareal asked, Who among all the tribes of Yeshareal has not come up with the congregation unto 𝐉𝐄𝐄? For they had made a great oath concerning him who did not come up unto 𝐉𝐄𝐄 to Mitzpah. He will surely be put to death. Also the children of Yeshareal repented themselves for Benjamin, their brother, and said, Today there is a tribe cut off from Yeshareal. What will we do for wives for those who remain, seeing we have sworn by 𝐉𝐄𝐄 that we will not give them our daughters for wives? Which one of the tribes of Yeshareal did not come up to Mitzpah unto 𝐉𝐄𝐄? And behold, no one came to the camp from Yabesh Gilead for the assembly. For the people were numbered, and behold, none of the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilead were there. Therefore the congregation sent 12,000 men of the valiant, and commanded them, saying, Go and strike the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilead with the edge of the sword, with the women and children. But this is the thing that you will do. You will completely destroy every male, and every woman who is lain with man. Furthermore, they found 400 young virgins, who had not known man, by lying with any male, among the inhabitants of Yabesh Gilead. Therefore they brought them to the camp to Shiloh, which is in the land of Canaan. And the whole congregation set to speak to the children of Benjamin, who were in the rock Rimmon, and they came to them peacefully. And at that time Benjamin came again. And they gave them wives of the women who they had saved alive of Yabesh Gilead. However, they did not suffice them. And the people repented themselves for Benjamin because of the work. 𝐉𝐄𝐄 had a breach in the tribes of Yeshareal. Then the elders of the congregation said, What will we do for wives for those who remain, seeing the women are destroyed out of Benjamin? And they said, An inheritance for those who escape of Benjamin, so that a tribe is not destroyed out of Yeshareal. However, we may not give them wives of our daughters, for the children of Yeshareal has sworn, saying, Cursed is he who gives a wife to Benjamin. Then they said, Behold, there is a feast of 𝐉𝐄𝐄 in Shiloh yearly, which is on the north side of Beit-el, on the east side of the highway that goes up from Beit-el to Shechem, and on the south of Labbanah. Therefore they commanded the children of Benjamin, saying, Go and lie in wait in the vineyards, and see, and behold, if the daughters of Shiloh come out to dance in dances, then you can come out of the vineyards, and each man can catch yourself a wife from the daughters of Shiloh, and go to the land of Benjamin. And it will be when their fathers and their brethren come to us to complain, that we will say to them, Be favorable to them for our sakes, because we did not reserve a wife for each man during the war. For you cannot give to them at this time, you will be guilty. And the children of Benjamin did so, and took wives according to their number, of those who danced, whom they caught. And they went and returned to their inheritance, and repaired the cities, and dwelt in them. And the children of Yeshareal departed at that time, every man to his tribe and to his family, and they went out from there, each man to his inheritance. In those days there was no king in Yashareal. Every man did what was right in his own eyes.